So I'd like to welcome on stage a designer from Cartifact, Bruce Daniel.
Thanks, Brady. Well, I was motivated to put this presentation together when I realized how much technology has advanced beyond the design of maps. We've made great strides in the technology and less so in the design. So I wanted to look at what location-based services meant to me if I knew what it meant back in the late 50s, early 60s. And there were free gas station maps all over the place that really kept me entertained. One of the main features of these maps that was interesting to me at the time was how the covers were used to depict a social context. And this is something that it just seemed interesting to me, that the cover showed how you might experience the map. People here are enjoying the great outdoors, picnicking, dressed in the garb of their day. So I thought, geez, a lot of historic maps have a very rich context. And I started looking back. I went to the David Rumsey collection and found this wonderful Atlas of Mexico by cartographer Antonio Garcia Cubas. This was in the 1885. And this particular map shows a whole range of social strata and ethnographic activity that was associated with the country. And I looked carefully and discovered this image here, which is essentially the same. It's a family enjoying the great outdoors and picnicking, again in their garb of the day. And then it occurred to me that 2 years ago at this very conference, Google introduced Street View. And the press seemed to focus on one image that came up in Street View, which was a couple of bikini-clad co-eds enjoying the great outdoors, dressed in the traditional garb of the day. So it was that kind of span of a similar focus that really interested me. And that's a theme I'm going to carry through here a bit, looking back to historic solutions to issues that we may be dealing with today, or seeing where the parallels are. One of the issues that is coming up as we deal with the online world is how to handle variable data, and what are the different options that we have to do that. So this is an older map. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but the variable data here is the heading and the bearing, because the north position rotates according to the segment that's being depicted. Here's some variable data that we're quite used to, where the subway or the stops are equally spaced but represent a variable distance between each stop. And we're quite used to incorporating this. So how this translates to online is something that we as designers are dealing with. Here's a Chinese military map from the 1800s where there's a fort in the middle. And there are 4 different perspectives to that fort. The mountains are rendered according to the perspective, and the scale on each side of the map is different. So I'm going to look at 3 examples of essentially the same map. And this goes back to our treasure map that Natasha from LBX mentioned earlier. This is just a little clip art icon, but it deals with both the search and the destination, which are critical in all mapping, and it alludes back to a time when maps were very simply depicted in that way. Well, here's a screenshot from World of Warcraft, and we're using a similar treasure map that speaks more to the adventure rather than the destination and the particular path. And here's a much more personal map done by a child. It says Mer People Island. And it's really about the personal experience involved in this. And I love this map. And we'll come back to this personal expression a little bit later. So Cartifact has developed a mapping space that takes those qualities of exploration and tries to put them in an online framework. I think that the notion of exploring is critical to mapping as we move forward. We're trying to bridge a gap between a paper map and an online map experience. So you'll notice we're using a few different base maps. Type does not change size. I mean, type does change size, unlike most online convention where type stays the same size. And our lens tool, which has been featured earlier by Michael, thank you, is an attempt to talk about and express the notion of exploration. And there are lots of different tile sets. You can drill deeper to find out a little bit more data in the place you want. I really encourage you to explore it. It's at maps.cartifact.com. But one of the things that is most important for me to express to you right now has to do with the actual interactivity that's involved in it. It's not just about presenting data, but how you do it. And it's a little bit addictive. Even after having worked with it for a while, I still find myself just, I wonder what that would look like. We've just recently put in a beautiful 1887 map that we were given access to by the LA City Archives. We went and digitally created that and assembled and put it into the lens. And to coincide with the WARE conference, we released version 1.1 of this that adds our New York building level map to the base. It has another map from the David Rumsey collection showing the original watercourses of the island of Manhattan in relation to the sanitary conditions, which is kind of interesting. And also we've added, in one of the tabs of the lens, we've added some 3D oblique buildings that were rendered by Union Design in New York. And I think this is something that we're going to continue to develop. Check it out at maps.cartifact.com. So the historic framework of the lens tool led me to think about other ways to utilize the lens. And one of that would be to think about the future so that city planners could they could map a vision of how they see the city in the future rather than simply in the past. So it's sort of like a little time machine that you can use. And I looked back historically at that notion and came across this really wonderful map of the Boulder Dam that I just love the hand quality of this and the illustrative additions that are in there. There's a little train, there's some little trucks on the roads and stuff like that. And then I look carefully and it's, this is the Boulder Dam as it will appear when the dam is completed. So here we have a map of the future. Another thing that we're dealing with as a community is more and more data and how to represent data over data over data and all the different layers. So one of the things I think is going to be very interesting in the future is something that I'm calling implied data or implied context. And this is a map of Amsterdam from an old map. I forget what date it is. But the implied data here is the atmospheric condition, where you have shadows of clouds on the landscape. And it's telling you something about the atmospheric level, not just the land level. And years before I discovered this, I had done a map for Santa Fe Children's Museum, where the lower right of this map, there was a large tree that I wanted to include in the geographic reference, but I didn't want the tree to obscure what was going on, so I had simply put the shadow of the tree in there. The other aspect of mapping that I think is so important as we move forward in the online world is the personal expression. This is a map drawn by a 9-year-old Polish boy during the Cold War, where you can see there's a Pershing missile over the US, Sputnik over Russia, and the doomsday clock counting down till midnight. And I think it's quite evocative as a map. Other expressions of map in personal artwork. This is a quilt inspired by a landscape. And one of the most moving images that I've seen in a long time is this map that was created by an Inuit hunter in 1926. He had never seen another map of the area, and simply with the tools that were available to him, mapped 83 islands and 10 reefs. The other maps of the time, not that he referenced them, but they only showed 38 islands. And he used driftwood and sealskin that was nailed to a board, and then used pigments to represent the various different features: blue for the lakes, yellow for the grasslands and swamps, black for black lichen. And what this is a cartographic and cultural artifact. And I think what's important, and I think, personally, I think it's incredibly powerful, because it's powerful both as a map and its accuracy, and for its artistic and personal expression. So I think one of the opportunities, if not obligations, we have as a community in moving forward is to consider the heritage and the cultural context that we put our maps in, and what that expresses about our society. And that's the area that I'm most interested in fostering in my work, and hope you'll join me in that pursuit. Thank you.